Speakers Committee on Workforce Development and Workplace Safety is about to convene. It's our intention to conduct this meeting with courtesy and decorum that's expected of us as representatives. Please help us attain that goal. We are short of a quorum, so we will go ahead and start hearing testimony of the subcommittee. This morning, we have Representative Burlison with House Bill 1770. Go ahead when you're ready, sir.
Mr. Chairman, so we're doing a subcommittee. Does the subcommittee then report to the full committee what was happened during the subcommittee? I'll let you know. But we do a subcommittee. I don't know how the full committee then can operate, not knowing the information that was obtained during the subcommittee. Can a report be made and show filed?
Works the same way as if you came in late.
So there's not a subcommittee. I came to the full committee late. I'm here at the subcommittee on time.
We don't need that roll call again.
Right. Okay.
I'll call over.
But will a report be made then and filed with the full committee? You're a witness.
Quorum is present. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
We didn't. But thank you for coming.
Here.
Vice Chair Fraser, Representative Spring,
Present.
Carr, Hampton,
Here.
Kelly,
Here.
May, McManus, Swan, Walker,
Present.
Weber,
Here.
White.
Here.
We have a quorum. Representative Burlison's House Bill 1770 will now be heard. Representative, go ahead if you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Eric Burlison. I represent the 133rd District, which comprises Western Springfield, the city of Battlefield, and parts of Greene County outside of those cities. House Bill 1770 is about worker freedom. It promotes individual liberty and freedom, and it's expressed in Article 1, Section 29 of the Missouri Constitution. It states that employees shall have the right to organize and to bargain collectively through representatives of their own choosing. This clearly protects and lays out the right of all Missouri workers to organize together and bargain collectively. This constitutional article guarantees every worker the right to choose their own representative, and that representative might just even be him or herself. We must work to uphold your right to join a union, join a competing union, or not join one at all. This is essential in our workplace if we're going to uphold the freedoms of every hardworking Missouri taxpayer that goes to their job, punches a clock, and gives of their own time to ensure that their family is fed and has a roof over their head. Our fathers envisioned a country where people were protected from the majority rule or the mob rule, and this legislation does not take away anyone's right to join and pay dues to a union. This bill just protects the individuals who do not wish to find union representation in their best interest. That kind of choice is fundamental to our liberty. And I want to read to you what I think is a poignant quote from John F. Kennedy that relays the essence of this, which is that employees shall have and shall be protected in the exercise of the right freely and without fear of penalty or reprisal to form, join, and assist an employee organization or to refrain from any such activity. While there are many reasons, one of the number one reasons is job growth. And if you look at the 24 states in our union that are freedom to work states, 1/4 of those states, 6 of those, border Missouri, causing manufacturers and small business owners within our state to look across the border to see and to move to those states. This fact can be seen in the number of jobs created in each state, According to the U.S. Department of Labor, it shows that between 2003 and 2008, freedom to work states created jobs 2.5 times faster than those states, such as Missouri, that did not have freedom to work laws in place. The migration of Americans from closed shop states to freedom to work states is proof positive of this fact and part of the reason that Missouri now has less representation in the U.S. Congress. In fact, since 2000, in that census, 5 million Americans migrated from states like Missouri to freedom to work states because of the job abundance that those states offer. When it comes to wages, partly because people are moving because of the salaries and the increased salaries that are being offered in those states. When you convert the personal income figures for all 50 states and adjust for inflation, freedom to work states have 4.1% higher per capita income, personal income than non-freedom to work states. That figure is based on 40 years of data. And it explains why it's no longer just a test case or an experiment. It is good economic sense. We have to be honest with ourselves and recognize that businesses, when seeking a new location for plants and facilities, they often list a high priority that they want to move to a state that has freedom to work laws. Because of this, when you look at the data from the National Institute of Labor Relations, Missouri manufacturing GDP from the year 2000 to 2009 decreased by 12.9%. So over almost a 10-year period, our manufacturing sector decreased by almost 13%. While at the same time, in the freedom to work states, they had an average growth of 14.7%. And you can see that in the graphs and the information that I'm displaying. Missouri will benefit from this legislation and become a state that attracts business, lures market jobs, and investment, all while increasing revenue to our state instead of losing out time after time to our neighboring states. Freedom to work is about people. Studies show that freedom to work states exhibit lower poverty levels and a higher standard of living. Freedom to work is about continuing to create economic climate in our state that allows the free market to do what government cannot do, which is create sustainable new jobs. Lately, we have heard a lot from our government about raising the wage across our union. If we want to get serious about all Missourians earning a decent wage, then we need to look for sensible market-based solutions that have proven to work time and time again. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, between 2001 and 2011, the compensation for the wages for workers in the private sector grew by 12%, as opposed to just 3% in states like Missouri. So ask any employee when they sit down with their employer over their annual wages or their salary adjustments, would that employee rather have a 12% pay increase or just a 3% pay increase? That is the difference that this can have an impact on those states. The question that we should be asking, what you will hear, one of the first data points that's often mentioned is that if you just simply take the states that are freedom to work states versus non-freedom to work states, people make less money. The truth is, we've always made less money in the Midwest and the South. That data point is not valid, because the question is because it doesn't consider what is changing. If you consider the fact that people in Missouri and Oklahoma have always made less money than they do in the East Coast and the West Coast, the question you should be asking is, if we make less money now, what will help our employees make more money year after year? What's changing them? If you were to take that same logic and apply it to other things, the question is that of causation. You could take the same logic and say, the states that have freedom to work laws in place have higher climate temperatures. They also have a higher propensity to have hurricanes, and you probably have a higher propensity to be bitten by an alligator. That logic doesn't make sense. What we need to use is data in a way and the logic makes sense. So when you look at the numbers and when you look at the salaries of those states, the question isn't what is different in those states, because you have to prove causation. and what is changing in those states. Studies show that the changes that are occurring in those states and is a result of causation, and that is a difference of 12% growth acceleration rate in wages versus just a 3% growth in changes in wages. When you account for cost of living in those states, or in disposable income, just in 2011, the disposable income was $36,800 on average in the Freedom to Work states, which is $2,200 higher than the average state that is forcing union rates. That's when you adjust for the cost of living. Worker freedom laws actually strengthen unions. Allowing workers to have the liberty to choose whether or not they want to join a union strengthens each union by giving them the drive to keep up with an ever-changing workplace, a workplace which desperately needs strong organizations that are responsive to their members and empowering them to compete in today's global market. A little-known fact, and this is a fact about Freedom to Work states that is contrary to popular belief, is they see their union memberships going up. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics from 2011 to 2012, worker freedom states had an overall increase in union membership of 39,000 union members, while in non-Freedom to Work states, such as Missouri and states like ours, we lost 390,000 workers. So while the 24 states that have Freedom to Work gained union membership of 40,000 members, in non-Freedom to Work states like Missouri, we lost 400,000. The reality is, and it's often mentioned, that the attempt is to bust unions. The reality is that the status quo is busting unions. And laws like this do not protect them. I also want to discuss the concerns that many workers have about freedom to work regarding the so-called free rider problem. Many opponents of worker freedom fear that such legislation will allow non-paying members to receive benefits of a union without paying their share. I want to soothe some of these concerns and explain why worker freedom doesn't create a free rider problem. In 1962, the Supreme Court case Retail Clerks versus Lion Dry Goods acknowledged that the legality of member-only union contracts. The member-only contracts prevent free riders by requiring workers to join unions to receive collective bargaining representation. Freedom to work is truly about freedom. It's not anti-union, it's not pro-union, it's pro-freedom. It's about giving individuals the freedom to join or not to join a union. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Lindy Frank. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. I got to tell you, most of the time you were talking, I kind of faded out because some of the things you said were just so contrary to popular opinion and logic. It kind of went away from me. It seems to me, despite your plea of objections that to the contrary, unions keep raising wages. And if we eliminate that element within our economy, wages will definitely fall. Do you not agree?
I disagree, because I think having a law that forces a protection creates an artificial protection.
Well, a lot of stuff doesn't force anything. The law provides the ability, and
what
workers,
I think
workers within. I'm sorry. So
well,
workers
I think
within
that,
a
to
workplace.
answer your question, I think that in an isolated environment, that you might be able to say that you could increase wages, but we're not in an isolated environment. Our state is competing with other states,
Yes.
and what's clear from the data
It's not
is
clear
that
at all.
those
The
states
data is ridiculous.
that those states
Absolutely.
are growing in their job and wages.
Right along with your thing, what's equally ridiculous, what I actually was offended by was the idea of calling democracy mob rule. Greatly offended, sir. We used to believe in that. We used to believe in liberty and freedom and democracy.
Gentlemen, you should study our founding fathers.
I really should.
Because the founding fathers were
But
concerned
calling
about
this
a
mob rule
democracy.
is completely offensive. This is
we are a democratic republic.
Sure. This is democracy in action. You have a group of workers who said, yes, We wish to take advantage of the opportunity we're awarded by law, the right to join a union. We're going to vote on that. 50% of us agree with it. A majority of 51%, 50% plus one at least agree with it. We've decided to go union, and now they won't be allowed to be. They won't be allowed to that anymore. It's going to be individual,
Gentlemen,
right?
the goal, well,
That's a question.
we're a democratic
That's a question right
republic,
there.
but within that democratic republic, we still don't allow businesses or individuals to violate the right of the individual. We protect the right of the individual. The Constitution protects your rights to freedom of speech, your right to religious
How about the right of the
expression,
individual who
and
didn't vote for
in
you?
the Constitution, your right to associate with whom you wish to associate is listed as an individual right. Our founding fathers
That could be an appearance of that.
expressly intended to make sure that the mob rule,
Yeah, the mob rule,
the
mob rule.
that through, yes, gentlemen, we are a democratic republic.
The
And the
idea,
Constitution protects the rights of the individual from that.
as the voters who didn't vote for you, are they protected as well?
Gentlemen, this is
They're different issue, right?
It's a republic.
Right.
I'm an elected
The
representative.
idea that we're going to be, unions are going to go stronger, you're telling these folks out here, don't worry, sit down and relax. Your union's actually going to go stronger if we put right to work on you. If we don't allow your unions in the first place, you will get stronger. I guess the same idea, if I cut off one of your arms, you would get stronger with the other arm. Is that the logic works? If I cut off your head, you get smarter? Might work, I don't know. Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman.
Representative White,
No, I was going to make a point of order, sorry.
Representative May. May.
How you doing today, Representative?
Good afternoon.
I have just a couple of questions for you. You said the individuals, we're protecting the rights of individuals. When we instituted other pieces of legislation, such as the whistleblower, who were we protecting then? Were we protecting businesses or individuals?
This is not the whistleblower bill. I'm not sure how that, this bill is not the whistleblower bill. This is the freedom to work bill. This
Well,
is
I mean,
1700.
Okay. I disagree, but I see you don't want to answer that question because, see, on some instances, we paint the picture that we want to protect workers. But when we're protecting workers, we're protecting their rights to organize. That's what we're protecting. And I think, is your bill stopping them from having the right to organize according to the law? Because if unions are only 8% of the working population, what is it that you are threatened by when it comes to labor? And where are your workers that you are protecting?
I'll answer the first question, which is that we are protecting the right of the individual to organize, to join a union, to bargain collectively. They just cannot create a union security agreement, which forces every individual to join and pay dues.
Okay, and where are your workers who are in support of your bill?
I'm sorry?
Where are your workers? You've been offering this bill every year, and I haven't seen one worker testify in favor of. And last year, we had people from other states come testify.
I had people come and testify at the first hearing. I'm not aware of who's here to testify at this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Weber, go ahead.
Well, I'll start out by, Mr. President, I'm going to start with paying your compliment. I was actually very pleased when I read the first sentence of the bill that except in instances where this section conflicts with or is preempted by federal law. And so I'm paying you a compliment. We can at least agree today on this particular bill that federal law trumps state law. And so I'm glad we're on the same page on that, at least at this moment in this bill. I have two questions for you. First, walk me through the process under your bill. If you say you're claiming that you're expanding rights for individual employees, you're giving them the freedom to bargain for their own wages. Explain to me how it would work for an employee who works for a multi-billion-dollar, multinational corporation. Explain the process of them bargaining their own wages. How would that work? They go and they say,
like the other 90% of the population that does it today.
okay. So I work for ExxonMobil. That's hundreds of billions of dollars, and I want improved dental benefits. I call the CEO and say I need better dental benefits. How's that going to work?
They compete in general. If you want better benefits, then you ask for them.
Okay, and what's the outcome going to be?
Employers. Often employers are competing for labor. Your wage. The reason why they pay you a salary, the reason why they put the job out, is that they need workers, and so they're going to offer a competitive salary, and they're going to offer competitive benefits in order to.
They're going to right. I mean, so they're going to be the ones dictating the terms, correct? You just said they're going to be ones offering competitive wages. They're going to be the ones. It's going to be a take it or leave it deal. It's going to be, this is what we're offering, you take it or leave it, right?
That's how the world in general exists.
Okay, and I agree, that's true most of the time. But what you said that you're trying to do is you said you're trying to give workers the freedom to bargain their own wages. But then as you just said, this is a take it or leave it deal. That's not bargaining. Take it or leave it's not bargaining. Take it or leave it, as you said, the majority of the world exists, is not empowering the individual worker to seek better wages. It's just putting the individual worker at the whim and the mercy of what their multinational corporation wants to pay them, isn't it?
Right, gentlemen. Have you ever? So whenever I go to interview for jobs, whenever I've got jobs, you have an offer. You can counter that offer. You can.
And I'm fine. That's the way the world works most of the time. But let's not pretend that we're giving people a right then. Let's not pretend that we're giving them the right to bargain their own wages when we're clearly saying that, no, you're going to be a price taker. You're not going to be negotiating for the price like a union would do.
I think
you're going to be a price taker. You're going to take whatever the market gives you, which that might be okay, but that's not empowering the individual. It's not providing the individual worker a freedom. It's an illusory freedom. We're saying that we're giving them a freedom, but it's not truly a freedom because they can't actually practice it. They can't actually negotiate these wages.
Well, they can, and they do. I do. I don't pay. I'm not in a union. I don't pay dues. I bargain for my own salary and wages. And if I'm unhappy, I can renegotiate those salaries or benefits. If I'm not happy, I can move to another job, or if my employer's my salaries and my wages are based on my scale. So if I improve my productivity, then I can earn more money. Those kind of choices within a normal workplace environment are often not available. But if I decide, hey, individually I'm going to change, I'm going to perform better, then that's allowing me to negotiate with the employer in a way that I can't do through.
I think you're providing illusory freedom. You're telling people that they have a right to do something that in practice they have no practical ability to do.
Right now, just to work for the employer, they have no right whether they're going to join or pay dues to an association. They have the right to join or not join. They do not have the right to pay dues.
My last question. So, I know, Mr. Chairman, you've got a lot of witnesses.
And so it does give them that right back.
Okay. One of my complaints in this committee is that we feel like we spend a lot of time arguing with ghosts. And when I say we, I would say the pro-labor groups in this building, in this committee, continually have, name names, name jobs, name practices, name people, and then the opponent, the anti-labor groups rarely do that. And so what I would like to ask of you is, I hear all the time that businesses want to relocate to a right-to-work state, that's an important criteria for them. And so I can name you companies that say it doesn't matter to them, right? I can name you Volkswagen, who just said, it doesn't matter to us, we're going to build the plant regardless either way. We can name companies that have praised their union workforces. Boeing just praised their union workforce yesterday. My question to you is, can you name some companies that have said, we will not come to Missouri unless they become right to work?
I don't have any that I can say.
See, I'm arguing with ghosts again. Because I'm giving you names of people that say it doesn't matter.
We can provide.
You relocate here, and then you say, no, there's lots of companies that it matters.
I can tell you companies that I can tell you because I don't know them.
For years I've been doing this.
because they're not here. For me, that's not part of my.
I'm naming companies that aren't.
But I can tell you businesses within this state that have said they will not grow within this state, I can tell you that, look, locally, Solo Cup left this state because of that. I can tell you that American Products in my area, that they expressly said that they're looking to potentially grow, and that having this in place would be a determining factor.
We don't know any companies that would come to the state of Missouri. They would
You're
buy
asking
for
me-
rent to work.
Joan, I deal with the businesses that are in my district, and you're asking me a question for businesses that I don't talk to. I don't have that scope to teach.
But you can make the claim that that's one of the that's the difference.
Because Joan, I speak with people at the chamber, and I speak with, and I can tell you this, for example.
I'd ask them too, but they
here's
can't
what I
do
can
it.
tell you: the business owners that I do talk to that lease manufacturing space, they tell me that it's a determining factor for the businesses they're trying to lease to. Does that make sense? I don't talk with the other businesses because they're not in the state.
It's still anonymous, though. It's still anonymous. You understand my frustration, right?
I understand. If you like, I could try to do a search and ask businesses around the
Great.
country.
Every year people say that and they never follow through, but maybe
I can tell you that the businesses in my district, how it's impacted them.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, would you like to testify, please?
Against.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Lewis, Missouri AFL-CIO Secretary Treasurer. I'm here today to testify against the freedom to work, and to me it's just one more way of rewording the right to work. It's the same old tired legislation. I've asked, and it's being passed out right now, the St. Louis Business Journal today bragging about how union and management has worked together to ensure that Boeing has a new contract here in St. Louis. It's good for 7.5 more years. They work together to change the model of what they've been dealing with and doing as far as their labor agreement goes. It addresses the issue of lower wages for new hires. It addresses one of the most costly issues ever in the history of the industrial revolution, and that's pension plans. It all is addressed at Boeing and their employees, and it's working together. I think I testified earlier on one of these bills that, you know, this one's just another way of wording it, as I said, that given the opportunity, labor works with companies. And I mean, there's proof right there. Back in December, in the extraordinary session, it was proven. We did it. We all worked together. No one came up here and said, Boeing will do this if we become a right-to-work state, or Boeing will not do this if we don't become a right-to-work state. It's just not true. Some of the other points that the representative here made, who has introduced the bill, and that is about the wages in particular. Well, let's go beyond the wages. Let's talk about Missouri being an at-will employer state. The employer can terminate you for parting your hair wrong if he wants to. There is no just cause covered by state law. That's what organized labor does. Organized labor helps people who are discriminated against in the workplace, who are let go because the boss's brother-in-law needs a job. It's not fair. And that's the real creation of unions. It's the core issues. And if anybody doesn't have one of our core issue books that talks about protections of a collective bargaining agreement, I'll be happy to bring one to you this afternoon. And why should the state discriminate against an employer who wants to have a union shop? They don't meddle in the business of employers who are not union. They don't say you got to be union. It's up to the employees. It's up to that employer. If the employer is a good employer, there are way more employers who are not unionized than there are who are union. We're talking about 8% of the workforce here, and those employers enjoy having a collective bargaining agreement for reasons that the reasons are numerous. I just know the ones they tell me about. They like having a fixed cost for 36 months. They know what their costs are going to be. They know what their health and welfare costs are going to be. They know what they've agreed to put into a pension plan. And they enjoy that. And I know that this does not preclude anyone from having a collective bargaining agreement, but it certainly precludes the employees as the number of union members go down, or as some unions cannot continue to represent all the employees that they would like to. It just happens. And also it was talked about in questioning with the representative, for the realm of union jobs, the people who are mostly represented by, not doctors, not IBT technicians, let's talk about blue-collar workers and setting the bar and what the normal pay is for them and what employers are expected to pay. Well, if collective bargaining agreements are not there, what is the bar set at then? Minimum wage, no benefits, at-will employment? I'm afraid that's where we end up without collective bargaining agreements. And one other point was made that I'm glad I had this with me, and that is the unions, that employees, even in a union environment, can negotiate for themselves. That's not true. And I don't even understand what these numbers mean, but maybe one of the representatives who are lawyers would understand. 87 Supreme Court, 903 Supreme Court of the United States. But it's right there. Unions have to represent everyone who is covered under their collective bargaining agreement. If not, they get sued, the union gets sued, and the people win. And then it costs the union more money. So it's not a fair trade-off. It is a freeloader situation. And this is just one other bill, one more way of saying we want to make the playing field when it comes to employment more in favor of employers, less in favor of employees, all in the name of job creation that doesn't work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Creighton.
Inquire, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lewis.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Here we are again.
I know.
You know, we've talked about these issues off and on, and I guess I keep looking at that map that's up on the wall, and you look at the states that appear to be prospering today, and they're all right-to-work states. When you look at those in the gray that aren't, those industrial states up in the Northeast, California, and some of the other ones, it doesn't appear like they are prospering near as well as those in the dark. And then when you look at the union membership from 30% back in the 70s down to 8% today, and you look at all the other things that have changed in the world, it makes you wonder why. Would you have an answer for that?
I'll try to answer it. I think a lot of the jobs, I wish Mexico was on there. I wish Indonesia was on there. I wish Vietnam was on there. You'd see a heck of a lot more jobs in those areas. It's about corporate greed, Representative, in my opinion. It's strictly corporate greed. When Maytag moved, first they moved to a southern state, and then they moved to Mexico. Did Maytag washers and dryers decrease in price to the consumer? Absolutely not, sir. They did not. And it's all in the name of corporate greed, and that's really the only answer I have for that question.
Corporate greed. Are those corporations, many of them, owned by stockholders and investors? And I bet, would you have an IRA that might have investments in some of those companies?
I might. I'm not a folio guy. I just put my money somewhere and hope they take care of it.
But again, that's you know, that's America, and that's the way our financial system and our corporations have evolved, whether we like that or not. I mean, NAFTA changed things back in the early 90s. We know that. We know it totally changed things for the country, and I will, best of my recollection, the minority party in this chamber was in the majority in those days in Washington, D.C., and President Clinton presided over the majority of that. I know it started under the H.W. Bush administration, but it was the times. It was the way the world was moving, and whether we like it or not, it happened, and it's there. And you know, you talk about things, a Maytag washer. I can also remember my dad buying a calculator in the 60s. He was a banker, and it was $250 for an electronic calculator. And today you can get one free at rallies or political events. People give away calculators, and they do more today than they did then. So I mean, a lot of it's technology. There's a lot of factors involved. But I guess the bottom line is this bill, aside from some of the others we've heard, it puts it on the ballot for the people to decide. Right? Is that right, Representative? So what's wrong with that? Let the people decide whether they want to be a right-to-work state or not. All of our neighbors except one is.
Well, Representative, my answer to that is, if Maytag wants to move from the middle of Missouri to Mexico, why don't we take a vote before we let them go and let the people decide if they should let them go to Mexico? I mean, you're putting people...
That's a corporation. That's their business. That's the stockholders' decision.
But, sir, you're injecting the government into an agreement between employees and employers, people who've never worked in a union shop, people who don't understand unions, and having them vote on something that they completely don't understand. How is that fair?
Right now, Richard, people don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. I'm sorry.
Yes, they do.
I get my guys mixed up sometimes.
There's only two of us.
Well, I keep looking at Richard. He's always smiling and grinning at me, and we're friends, so I did a nice tie on today.
Representative, I think we're going to have to move.
Okay.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative Webber, very quickly, please.
You brought up another point about raising the bar for everybody. And there's been a lot of discussion about, there's continued discussion about economics, and that's very important. But I wanted to take a moment to thank you on that. You probably know, yesterday in my district, a worker was killed at work.
I did hear about that, Representative.
Lieutenant Bruce Britt. He was a member of the AFL. He was a firefighter active in Local 1055. And he died at work. He died after 23 years working for my community. And the numbers are very important on this. Paychecks are important. Job growth is important. But you pointed out that there's something certainly equally, if not more important, and that's the safety of workers and the fact that everybody comes home at the end of the day. And I just wanted to tell you that I know organized labor and we have firefighters here are very close, and I'm very sorry for your loss. We're very grateful for the work that he's done for us, and we understand that that economics can't tell the whole story, and that there has to be something out there to make sure that as many workers home come safely every night. I just wanted to, as one of the leaders of one of those organizations, I want to say thank you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Mr. Atkins, would you like to testify, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jay Atkins, General Counsel and registered lobbyist with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to go on record in support of this bill. I know we're short on time. I don't need to belabor the points. I suppose in attorney speak, I will incorporate his testimony by reference, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Representative Frank? Ed?
Why would the chamber support this? Do they support this because it'll make business be cheaper for them by reducing cost of labor?
I don't think that's, no. The chamber supports this because it is, numbers would suggest pretty definitively that this is an economic growth opportunity for the state. I think the track record is right to work states have enjoyed over the past 30 years more robust economic growth, than those that do not have these types of freedom of choice laws.
So the good sponsor has suggested that what he's protecting from is workers being forced to pay fees and having no choice about it at all. Is that part of the reason why the chamber is supporting this?
I think.
So if it doesn't reduce wages,
Well,
what it does do is actually provide these workers some protection. You support it on that grounds.
Well, if I could answer the question, I want to be clear that this is not, the Chamber's position is not an anti-union position, and I don't believe that this bill is okay. And I don't believe that, that this legislation is anti-union. But what I would tell you is that I think good unions don't need compulsory funding, and bad ones don't deserve it.
The question was, why does the chamber support this? We mentioned that it doesn't bring wages down at all, right? It doesn't bring wages down. I can see where the chamber actually would support that. If reducing labor costs was a huge portion of this bill, of course it's not, but if it were, then you guys may actually go ahead and support it for that reason. It reduces your labor costs. Well, or are you protecting it, or are you supporting it because it provides that protection to your workers?
Representative, I think you're oversimplifying the Chamber's position. The Chamber's position is that we support Missouri's businesses, and we are going to support any type of legislation that increases, Missouri's competitiveness nationally.
How do you do that, making us more competitive?
Well,
by reducing our wages?
No, well.
That's what it sounds like.
And Representative, with all due respect, you're trying to get me to say that the Chamber supports reducing wages, and I'm not going to say that because I don't believe that that's what this bill is about, and I don't believe that that's what this bill does. So if that's the answer you're looking for, then that's not the answer I'm going to get. What I will
never get it out of you.
No, you do not, nor will you be. But what I will tell you is that if you look at a portfolio of what makes a state competitive,
right,
both nationally and internationally, and makes it a more attractive place for businesses to relocate to and grow, I would tell you that right to work is one piece of that puzzle that is very important. That's why we're supporting this bill.
I could see businesses wanting to grow and come to a place where wages will be cheaper. I do understand that, no doubt whatsoever. And I do see the element that you want to protect workers from having to pay these fees. Can you tell me another instance where companies have said that we want to help workers from paying a certain fee? Fee of my doctor, it keeps going up all the time, co-pays, all that kind of stuff. I never have, companies going, we want to protect our workers from these fees that they have. The video rental place, these charge me out the arms and legs, for a link. Never saw an employer walk and say, we want to stop these. Just give me another instance at all where corporations and chamber, good legislators we have, try to protect us from this.
And Representative, I don't have a problem if a union wants to charge members fees, and if members want to willingly pay those fees. The chamber doesn't have any problem with that. In fact,
the unwillingness part, right?
What we believe is that giving workers the choice of whether or not to join a labor union, having that type of environment, whether it leads to more robust unionization or less unionization, having that freedom of choice is what is best for the worker and for the employees and the employers, and by extension for Missouri.
This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense is that you guys would be supporting this because it does reduce wages, but I'm going to move on off that. Okay, last question, can you tell me a CEO, maybe one that's in part of your chamber, that goes to work every day without a contract? Do you have any CEOs without contracts? I'm
not privy to the contracts of our member CEOs.
Have you ever heard of any of y'all that are working without a contract? Any CEOs?
I don't know I'm sure, yeah. My wife and I own an in-home business. We own an in-home daycare. She is the CEO of that business, and I do not believe she has a contract.
I'm the CEO of my own life too, but you may be surprised. If you haven't heard of any, you may be surprised if you did hear one. Fair to say?
I'm assuming you're asking about.
I was.
Listener, well, I want to understand, because I think the reality is that there are CEOs of companies every day in this country, in Missouri and other places, that work without contracts. So if you're asking me, does that happen, the answer is yes. Now, if you're taking it to a level of multi-billion-dollar corporations, yeah, you're probably right. I would assume those guys have plenty of lawyers looking out for their interests and that they're working under contract.
It just kind of seems a smart thing to do.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know why it's not smart for workers. Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman.
Well, may I answer that question, Mr. Chairman?
very briefly.
I think it is smart for workers to operate with a contract, and if they can do that, but I don't think it's smart to force them into it. I think if they want to make that choice, they should be able to. If they don't want to make that choice, they should be able to.
Thank you very much, sir. Could I hear from Mr. Ramshaw, please?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to just go on record in opposition to House Bill 1770. The relationship that we have with the plumbers and pipers in St. Louis with our contractor groups, Mechanical Contractors Association and Plumbing Industry Council, it gives the owners along with the end users for their projects a good fiscal responsibility for knowing a number on their project. It helps with the completion date, with the educated, highly skilled workforce, and that's a good business plan in today's market. The Missouri Chamber, they always testify at these different hearings on workers' bills, and I do have a concern with that, because when they're not in this room, their leadership meets with us to help business development in the state. And it's just disheartening that they reach out to us to make things get done in the state, and when we try to look for some help with them, for workers in this state, it doesn't work out. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Representative May? Go ahead.
Hello, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I was listening to the dialogue, between the representative from the chamber, and he was talking about, bad unions, but I've been in the workforce for over 20 years. Would you agree that unions came about because there were bad employers?
Yes, I would. There was some employers that had taken advantage of workers, and it just wasn't. There was no good opportunity to resolve issues between the employers and the employees. And so, with this way of having some type of collective bargaining agreement in place, it ensured a fair playing field or a level playing field.
That's right. And would you agree that labor has afforded workers, an opportunity to fight on an equal playing field with employers?
Yeah, I don't want to say fight. I think it's just coming down that we get the right people in the room to come out with an agreement that works for everybody at the table. I think fight's a bad word, but a wrong word. But I think it's just there's enough good policy in this state, and there's if we could have better economic development leadership in this state on bringing through tax credits or whatever that might be, to entice business to come to this state, I think we'd be better off. It seems like we're continuing to find more time to figure out how to take away the pay of the employees more than anything. So.
Okay, and in your experience, haven't we had the experience where employers have reneged on agreements with workers, such as health care for retirees, retirees working for companies? Employers have taken advantage of loopholes in the law by, transferring liability for health care and, benefits and pensions to employees.
Yes, that's true. I was just, the Representative Burlison talked about this, the paper cup company down in Springfield, but I was trying to read an article off my iPad, but it looks like some of those agreements that were in place on the funding for pension plans were unfunded. So, I can't tell you why that happened, but somewhere along the line, some bad business decisions were made, because when you sit down and have contract negotiation, everybody knows what the agreement are, so everybody knows what the responsibilities are, and it's important to fund the pension plans that were agreed upon during the contracts.
And when workers come together to organize, that gives them a better financially able to organize when they have the backing of the union together. When you have 50 plus 1, and you're fighting for your pension, because I keep using that word, and you're fighting for your pension, you can afford it more when it's just one person trying to get a lawyer to fight for a pension that was mismanaged by a company.
Yes, it equals a playing field that you have some type of, I guess there is strength in numbers, there's no doubt, and it's just about leveling the playing field so that there can come to some agreement for a good contract or partnership.
Thank you.
Representative Hampton?
Should I inquire?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I'm going to do my best not to repeat some of the same questions that we've heard over and over again. And I know you've been kind enough to answer them in the past. So the question that I would start with the protection that is identified to the employee, and I know sort of a crude example was identified where someone could be terminated for combing his hair the wrong way. And with the higher wages, can you tell me why union membership continues to go in one direction?
I can't tell you, from a building trade standpoint, our workload depends on businesses, on new construction, our maintenance work inside a facility. As far as production facilities, it just could be on what the market, there is demand in the market for that facility in this state. We can all attest to, I guess, over the last several years, there hasn't been really a good business development plan in this state to lure other businesses to this state. I know we had discussions on the floor with Boeing, and I can't think of the other manufacturer facility that was in Canada years ago. I think it was Bombardier. It seems like sometimes we get lost in the process of trying to figure out who's using who to leverage how they can stay in a facility or plant or stay some of these companies where they're at. I think we need to have a better plan on what we can entice plant manufacturers or production facilities to come to the state that are either in this state or ones that are from other states that are smaller facilities are looking to grow. I can't tell you that every manufacturer that moves into the states becomes unionized, because I do believe that's not so. There's companies that come to the state all the time. They might not be the size of a Boeing, but there are companies and manufacturers that come to Missouri that are not unionized plants, and they come to Missouri because they come to the good workforce that we do have.
Gentlemen, would you say sometimes for business, corporations, or industry itself, that a concern that they may have could possibly be work stoppage?
From the building trade standpoint, over the years, and I can only speak from my standpoint of what we've been involved with, we have reached out for the last probably 20 years to sit down with construction users roundtable, contractors associations, the national building trades groups, the St. Louis Council of Construction Consumers, and the end users in this state, and we've had a great relationship. And I can't tell you when the last time I even heard of a work stoppage from a construction site.
And then finally, the representative identified a while ago in regards to Volkswagen, I believe, was identified. And I think they just recently had an opportunity to either to accept or to turn down. And part of the reasoning that I understand, and I could always stand corrected on it, was that their wages were actually going to be lowered if they accepted the bargaining unit itself.
That I can't answer. The only thing I can answer about car manufacturing facilities in other states is that those car manufacturers facilities, whether they're union or non-union, they normally have a building agreement with the National Building Trades, and those projects are union from a construction standpoint, and that just comes down to that they've had relationships with building trades across the United States. When they do decide to build a plant with the technology that's in that plant today, it has to be up and running at a certain time, And they get that delivered on every project they get with the national building trades or that state local building trades. I can't answer the other part of that question.
Okay. Thank you for your inquiry.
Thank you.
We need to move to Mr. Todd, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, and Phil Todd. I'm a resident of 49th District, and I'm here in support of this bill. I have 3 stories to tell you about unionism, and I'll start with my father back in the 1960s. My father was a milkman, had an independent route. He owned his own truck, his own refrigerated warehouse where he took delivery of his product. He set his own hours, paid his own wages. He was approached by the Teamsters Union to become a member, and he refused to become a member because he really didn't need them. He was an independent businessman. One day, union pickets set up at the entrance to his refrigerated warehouse right before his semi-truck delivery of milk product that would have sustained the business for a period of time was being delivered. That truck subsequently would not stop and unload his product until he signed with the union to become a member of the union. For my father and his family, it would have been economic ruin to him to not sign a contract at that point, or to not sign as a signature and become a member of that labor union. So he was forced to sign, and they delivered his product. But he still set his own wages. His wages weren't subject to their collective bargaining agreement. The only thing that he participated in as far as benefit package was a pension. After nearly 30 years in the Teamsters Union, when he sold that business and subsequently retired, he didn't get a good portion of that pension. Most of it was mysteriously vanished. He spent countless hours trying to track down where the money went to, and he could never get a substantial answer. So he lost a good part of that, what little benefit that he was going to get as being a member of that union. I'll move fast forward to my own experience with unions. Back in 1977, I went to work for the railroad, the Milwaukee Railroad. I was had to join the Railroad Workers Union, this Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way. At that time I was younger. I was looking at the money and the benefits, and I must say that they were good. You know, we had a decent workplace and safety rules and everything like that were decent, but we really never heard anything from our union representatives. Everything was just assumed. It was kind of almost a joke out there on the work sites, and as we traveled around, is where's our union at? Where are we at? Where are they at? But our dues were withheld from our paychecks, and we just went ahead and paid them. I left the railroad. I went into self-employment for a term and became engaged in the masonry business. In about 1999, I joined the Bricklayers Union here in Central Missouri, and the work was good. We had plenty of work. Benefits were decent. But one of the big concerns that I had when I joined that union was that the money that I was paying into my dues was being used for political causes and to elect political candidates who were against my principles. And one of the times that the different times that I challenged where those dues were going and how come we didn't have a choice in that matter, I was basically blacklisted, pushed back. I did remain a member of that union for almost 10 years, but I finally got fed up with it because the dues that I was paying, a good portion of that money was going to elect people who were contrary to my political beliefs as a family man, as a property owner. Some of the people who were being supported by union dues were not people who I would vote for because I didn't feel like they represented the values of my family and my particular circumstances. Had it have not been for that, I probably would still be a member of that union, but because I raised my concerns about supporting people who, or about my money being used to support political causes and people who I did not believe in, I was ostracized, pretty much experienced what I would consider a hostile working environment, and eventually I left the union and went back into self-employment again. So these are the reasons that I believe everybody should have a choice. Volkswagen was given a choice on the auto workers down in Tennessee, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and when given the choice, workers will exercise their right. But what we have here in Missouri is a lot of employees don't have a choice of where they work at. Our state employees do, though, and that's the thing that really is puzzling to me, is that state workers have a choice of whether they can want to join a union or not. I have a son who works in the Department of Corrections. They do have a Correctional Officers Association. He could be a member if he wants, but he chooses to opt out. And that's really, to me, that's a double standard. If our state, as an employer of so many people, would offer that choice, why are we not allowing that choice in the public sector? Why is there any difference? Especially when it's thwarting and hindering our economic freedom, and we're losing our population, losing congressional representation. We have to stop this downward spiral, and the only way we can do that is to become competitive again. And I thank you very much for your time.
Questions? Representative Frame, quickly, if you will, please.
I will be very quick. So you had worked two different union jobs, I heard. One in masonry.
Yes, sir.
And the other on the railroad.
Yes, sir.
And you testified that the pay was good, the benefits were good.
Yes, sir.
Were it better than non-union?
Well, in the railroad, there weren't that many other jobs aside from the railroad. So
I guess they would be better than non-union.
Yeah, I mean, the railroad pretty much sets their own standards, comparable to other jobs.
And the masonry, that's better than non-union as well, too?
Not necessarily.
Familiar with union wages and with what non-union wages right now?
Well, union wage is generally based on the prevailing wage.
Oh, it's based on what it actually is right now. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what it is because it varies according to different parts of the state. And
do you think there are instances where the non-union wage is actually better, or you think the union wage is better?
It's probably comparable. One of the things that the non-union wage, they're not going to be paying 2.5 or 3% of their wages for check-off dues right off the top of their paycheck.
But I work
so they could work for a little bit less and still probably have the same amount of spending.
Heck of a theory, but I actually worked construction for about 30 years altogether. Never worked the masonry side of it, but worked the mechanical side of it, and found the non-union element to be far, far lower in pay. I was looking at the map up there. Have been asked to travel across the United States some, and many of those states I wouldn't even go to. I sure would hope to be able to find a union job quicker than I would have to be sent out of town on these. Not only for the pay, which is significantly lower, but also for the quality of life and the health risk comes from working in some of those states. Extremely dangerous. You had said, I'm going to stop here real quick, but you had shown you weren't too crazy about unions, is fair to say, during your testimony. Here's my question, though, is if I believe the good representative here that this bill is actually going to make unions more strong, why would you be for it then with all the animosity towards unions?
Well, I believe it should be a choice, though, and where I had problems.
You know these unions get stronger now. If that's right to work, they will get stronger.
Well, that's fine.
You don't seem like
but that's a free market. That becomes a free market situation at that point. That's not something that's mandated by a law.
Yeah,
that you have to be a member of a union. Let the free market forces decide whether or not it's going to be a mutual benefit for the workers.
Sure, just based on your testimony, it sounds like you aren't very pro-union at all, and knowing this bill actually would make unions stronger should be some concern to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Could we hear from Richard Craighead now, please? Missed his shot. Ray Hefner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. I am going to be brief. This has been argued to death over the years. My name is Ray Hefner. I'm a registered lobbyist. I'm also the Executive Vice President of the Plumbing Industry Council, who hired men and women plumbers and pipe fitters, Local 562. we are speaking in opposition to this bill. In addition, the Sheet Metal Contractors Association St. Louis chapter, who hire the men and women of Local 36, are in opposition, as well as the Missouri Association of Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors. I would certainly entertain any questions. Yes, sir.
2 minutes, please, sir. Go ahead.
Gotcha. I'll make any questions. Actually, I wanted to send over to Mr. Ramshaw, but wasn't allowed to address those. Are you familiar with wages in for the piping industry?
Yes.
Okay. Any idea first of all, how long is the apprenticeship now in duration? How many years of the apprenticeship does one have to serve?
On the plumbing side, 5 years of apprenticeship. 5 years. Any idea what the plumbers or fitters, either one, are making per hour as a journeyman? Yeah, $34.75.
$34.75. And looking at that map there, I don't see any states that could match that wage, $34.75. Are you familiar enough with the country to know these right-to-work states? Are they typically more for journeymen in wages, or are they typically less?
Typically, statistical data would indicate that they're less.
Understand. And I understand, some states there's different economies. The good representative actually testified to that, obviously folks in New York are going to make more, of course, California. We all get that, but just on a typical basis, the folks who in right-to-work states are telling me, and despite all of his numbers and right-to-work is great, and right-to-work make unions stronger, your evidence and your life experience has been that right-to-work states are going to be less in pay, correct?
Generally speaking, yes. In fact, on Wednesday, we'll distribute concrete data that exhibits that to the entire committee.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Craighead, please.
I'm back. Good morning, Mr. Chair, or good afternoon, and all members of the committee. For the record, my name is Richard Craighead, United Steelworkers, District 11, and I really don't know what else to add to this conversation that we haven't already heard.
We almost missed you anyway.
Well, that's what the representative told me out there. I guess the only thing I would reiterate is that these things, these union security clauses, they are negotiated by the company and the unions. They have to be approved by the membership. They're not given to you just because you're union. You do have to negotiate for them. You usually have 2 or 3 contracts in from when you were first organized. So these people do have a choice, and they have the opt-in, and to be able to get out whenever they want to. If the union they're opposed to it philosophically, they can get out. The only thing that this does is take away the fair share fees that they would have to pay by federal law if they did get out.
Thank you, sir.
I do want to comment on what Representative Fraker said up there a while ago. One of the reasons that these companies, I'm out of the industrials, out of the manufactured heavy industry, they move because of some of these trade agreements that have been messed with over the years. NAFTA for one, and we've got the FTAA, and we've got another one coming up now that's all being done at the federal level. And when they take these trade agreements and put them out of balance, we suffer. A lot of our manufacturers and stuff have left the country, not left the state to go to right work. They've left the country either to go to Vietnam, Mexico. Well, Mexico's leaving to go to Vietnam now, so.
Go ahead. Representative Fraker.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman. These foreign companies, like coming from Japan or Korea or whatever, that are building manufacturing plants in the United States, are they coming to right-to-work states?
I don't think all of them are. I think some of them go down there, yes. A lot of reasons for climate and for the availability of workforce and everything else.
So we are seeing
There's a lot of different variations.
We are seeing some other countries coming over here.
Right. We have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Since this global economy has come around, we haven't found our place in this global economy yet. We're still struggling with it. And, I don't think putting any more regulations on the companies or the workers is gonna help matters until we figure out where we're at in this economy.
Thank you, Richard. Mr. Studier, please. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Robert Soutier, and I'm the president of the Greater St. Louis Labor Council, AFL-CIO, and it's a pleasure to give some testimony here today. I would stand in opposition to the bill presented by the representative. I'm somewhat disturbed by the fact that the most recent data that Representative Burlison can quote is from 2009, and in one instance, 2011. You know, this happens to be the year 2014. I can provide copies of the most recent economic handbook that's been compiled for every member of this committee that shows that right to work is not only bad for workers, it's bad for this state. It's bad for this state for a lot of reasons. If you look at every economic indicator on all of those brown states, I think they're brown anyway, all of those brown states, they'll show you that wages, benefits, everything in a right-to-work state lacks a non-right-to-work state. The most recent economic indicators say that wages on average in right-to-work states are over $4,500 a year less, around $191 a month in some instances for our southern states. If you look at all the states that are around the state of Missouri, isn't it odd that the one state, the one border state that's higher than the state of Missouri in median income is Illinois? And look at there, it's not a right-to-work state. You know, there's reasons that people move to the south. It's climate. It's certainly not a skilled workforce. And if we're going to spend our time in this state bashing the workers of this state, and I think every one of these bills is nothing more than an all-out assault on workers in this state. And I represent unions. I represent about 200,000 workers in the St. Louis area alone. And you know, as one of the representatives here indicated, we represent about 11% of the workforce nationally. And in this state, we probably represent about 7% of the private sector, maybe about 6% of the public sector. And although I'm willing to accept the fact that we may make some mistakes along the way, you can't blame us for everything that goes on in this state. And if my McKinley High School education serves me correctly, if I take 11% from 100%, it leaves 89%. So 89% of the workers nationwide, 89% of the workers in our state work in a non-union environment, which is fine for them. They can negotiate for themselves. Okay, I'm here to urge, don't take that right away from the 6% of us to think that we need some help. Because you know what? Let me tell you a little bit about unions. Unions were formed many, many years ago because very many reasons, and I can date back to some child labor laws when little babies, I call little babies people like 12, 13, maybe 8, 9 years old, working in the coal mines. When they had to dig that coal mine back so far to mine this coal, the only person they could get to go back in there was somebody real small. And they did that. And they abused workers. And we continue to be abused. But we're not being abused by the employers anymore. We're being abused by the people that are supposed to be representing us. What we're saying is, we do just fine collectively. Unions were formed by the people that work in an industry. We don't go outside and hire consultants and CEOs and bosses to run our unions. We run them with the rank and file. I'm a 47-year union member sitting here. 47 years as a union member. I worked first when I was in high school at the Kroger Corporation in St. Louis, and I bagged groceries and swept the floor and did about everything you could do, and I was a proud member of the United Food and Commercial Workers. And I quit that job. I quit that job making $3.25 an hour. And at the time, my mother, who worked in a non-union job, was working at a place called the International Hat Company. She pressed straw hats, Mr. Representative, for $2 an hour. Here I'm a high school kid, working 5 hours a night after football practice, making more money than my mother did on an hourly basis. And how she raised my sister and I don't know. But then my mother passed away, my father died when I was 8 years old, so I had nobody. I had nobody. And at 18 years old, I had to decide I had to go to work. I didn't have the opportunity to go to college. I had to go to work. So I went to work at a place called the Ramsey Corporation in Manchester, Missouri, and made piston rings for 4.5 years, and I was darn proud to do it. And when I quit that $3.25 an hour job, I quit it because I needed something called health care. This was in 1971. I needed something called health care, and this company offered me health care, and I had to join the union. And I was darn proud to join the union at that time, too. And I took a cut in pay to $3.17 an hour to go work that job. And I worked it for 8.5 years and was proud to do it. And I worked myself up. I became a shop steward. I became the vice president of my local, became president of my local, and subsequently I was elected as an organizer to the Machinist Union and then a business rep. And in 2002, the members of the Greater St. Louis Labor Council asked me to come and help them at the Labor Council and work over there. And I'm tickled to death to do it. I've represented workers my whole life. What we do the hard work that everybody else doesn't want to do in most instances. I represent everybody from the janitor that sweeps your floor at night in the office that you work in, to the person that builds your building, or builds your home, or makes your car, or checks you out at the grocery store. And I'm telling you, all of this legislation for freedoms and worker rights, it's not true. Everything that's being proposed will hurt workers. It hurts the very people, the very core people that we are supposed to represent. I was most recently on the JCO show with a leading economist from Lindenwood University, and at the conclusion of our interview, this economist said that right to work will drive wages down in the state that it occurs in. And that's the truth. It drives wages down. Why are we interested in attracting low-wage workers to this state? If you look at southern Missouri, go 60 miles south of St. Louis, there are no unions there, Representative. Where are your jobs now? Where's the jobs for the 89% of us that all know somebody that's lost a job? Where's the doctors that can't find work, the nurses that can't find work, the educators that can't find work, the salesmen?
I hate to cut you short, sir, but we're...
I understand. I'll wrap up. I mean, I'm passionate about this. And I'm telling you, we will work to defend workers every chance we get, and I would urge the legislature to do the same thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hear from Mr. Eckert, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
I do want to remind everyone, be sure and leave a witness form.
I just want to say, Mr. Satir, it's a tough act to follow. I came up behind Mr. Satir in the same organization, Machinist Union, 30 years ago Saturday. I'm proud to be a 30-year dues-paying member as well as Mr. Satir. I want to speak, much has been said in the committee hearings I've attended around freeloader bill. I, too, am now, for 25 years I worked in the shop, worked my way up just like Bob did, and for the last 5 years I've been a full-time representative there, and proud of it. Currently, I have one shop, as Mr. Craig had testified to, who did vote out, desert the union security clause of the contract. 3 years ago, I went in and negotiated a second contract there, and we tried to get union security clause back in. It was rejected by the company. I took a petition with 80% of the workforce in that said if we got union security clause in the contract, it wouldn't matter to them, they'd be okay with paying dues. But they didn't do it. The only reason why they wasn't paying dues at the time we went in negotiations was because they could get it for free, the representation. When the company representative sat up and said, well, you know, you only have 20% of your members there right now paying dues, so we think they don't want it, so we're not interested in putting union security in the contract. I showed them the petition. Here's 80% say they don't have a problem with it. The other 20% just shrug their shoulders and didn't want to comment one way or the other. And I said, let me give you an example. I said, if I took you out in this parking lot and I showed you 2 Cadillac Escalades, and I said, and this gentleman's name is Tom, I said, Tom, you can have this Escalade over here for free, or you can have this Escalade over here for $60 a month. Which one are you going to get in and drive out? And he wouldn't answer my question because it was obvious. You're not going to pay for something you can get for free. And that's what this is all about. I represent every member in that shop because it is the law to do so, contrary to what anybody believes. Also, if I didn't, I'd be considered a bad union rep in a bad union because I didn't represent everybody that didn't pay dues. I too, like Bob, am passionate about what I do. Therefore, I represent everybody in that shop, whether they're dues paying members or not, and I do it to the equal ability that I can, to the best ability I can. It's not right that 20% of the workforce there carries the load. When that shop was organized, there's 44 members. There's currently 125. Tell me they're not growing? It's not because it's right to work. You know. And again, 80% of those people who have been hired in there since that time frame said, I don't have a problem paying union fees. So it is a freeloader bill, in my opinion. And that's something we need to get away from. Let's spend our time on doing other things here, like has been commented here. Let's talk about job creation and get off of this garbage that says this is the reason why it doesn't exist. Now, I don't buy that for a second. I don't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. This will conclude the hearing on House Bill 1770. We'll now hear Representative Rader, House Bill 1772. Go ahead when you're ready.